And Andrea and Erica are the best people to talk about that since Andrea comes from a company called AJC. They're a consulting firm specializing in project management and change management for system selections, implementations, and phase two optimization. And Erica joins us from Strategies Group. We're an Acumatica VAR serving manufacturers, distributors, and construction across the United States. And then with that, I wanted to welcome the two of them. And to get started, can you both tell us briefly about how you started working in ERP systems and in what capacity your firms operate today? We can start with you, Erica.
Okay, so thank you, Selena, and hi, Andrea. It's truly, truly a privilege to be here with you both. A little bit about me. I'm Erica Carosi, and I have over 20 years of diverse experience in sales. So I have close to 5 years in the tech sector, and I started my journey in construction as a project manager. I was at a telecommunications company back in 1999, and during my tenure as a project manager, I also assumed the role of an SAP power user. This is when my love and respect for technology truly began. Years later, I embarked on a new path of selling technology. So in 2021, that journey took an unexpected turn when my current manager reached out to me on LinkedIn, and there, my immersion in the world of ERP sales, it began. So yeah, throughout my career, my unwavering passion has been driving success through technology and building enduring client relationships and partner relationships like we have with Andrea. And so today I'm here and I'm excited to share the insights and the lessons that I've gained from my journey. So thanks for being here with us, everyone.
And Andrea, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Selena. It's nice to be here with you and Erica as well. I appreciate the invitation. So I started my career also in 1999 in project management. I will say I've never worked for any other consulting firm. So I'm not a formal consultant. We began AJC in 2006. And initially the business was, as you mentioned before, project management, change management. For anything, I also started in consulting as a construction project manager. That was my first project. But obviously systems pervade anything. And when AJC began doing more of the process improvement type of work, what I would find, and this is a specific example, I was working for an injection molding company, and they were wanting to add the RFP module that they had with their current system provider into their daily use. But they really didn't know what their process was. Like they had never written down their RFP process. Like, how are they going to request for proposal? What are they going to do first? Who needs to know what? Who needs to participate in different ways? And because they had never mapped it out, I was talking to them about maybe you really need to know what you want before you go out and try and buy it. An example might be if you're, I don't know, let's say you're catering a dinner for a whole bunch of people and you don't bother to find out, who's got what allergy or if people like certain foods or not. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to not know what you need before you try to buy it. And so I started working with companies on really articulating their processes and what they needed. And then we moved into that selection piece really very shortly thereafter. We've been doing it for about 7 years, not only ERP, also learning management systems or CRMs, but ERP is really the biggest one out there. It pervades everything in a business, and it's something you have to take seriously and be ready for. So I'm excited about being here today.
Thank you. Thank you both for introducing yourselves.
I want to say it's so funny how much we have in common. Like
I know.
Yeah, like we were just talking earlier about like locations and places that we've lived, and then like now we find out about the project management in 1999. Like small world. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. To kind of go off of that, Erica, what do companies usually say when they come to you for the first time? Is it clear that when they've done preparation and work before, or is it really obvious when they haven't?
So a couple questions there. And so what they typically say when they come to me for the first time is we need help. They'll say, we have so many systems. We want to streamline our systems. We want to get rid of some and try to get as much in one, right? And that's where an ERP like Acumatica comes into play. And it's like the perfect fit because you can run a whole construction management company for the most part with Acumatica, whether it be the modules that are included or your third-party solutions that can integrate. But at the end of the day, what they usually say is, we have so many systems and we want like a single source of truth. Is that possible? And what can you do for me, right? And I think you asked about if they've been prepared, or right, if it's clear they've prepared.
Yeah.
Well, the degree of a company's readiness becomes apparent in the initial 5 minutes of our first conversation. I'll know pretty much in the first 5 minutes. So we'll encounter like a broad spectrum of preparedness levels among the companies that approach us. So some they understand their current strategies are ineffective, and they're seeking change. Yet they lack a concrete plan or a clear understanding of what needs improvement. And on the other hand, there's companies that acknowledge their weaknesses and they come to us with extensive research on industry players, specific solutions that they want to explore, and a well-defined list of essential functionalities. Typically, I find when a client is working with a consultant like Andrea, she's prepared them for this process, or they've kind of started to understand, those weaknesses and what they, what's that list of essential functionality. So that makes it easier for everybody involved for the most part. But for those companies that are in need of solutions, that are not working with a consultant, and if they lack clarity on their requirements, they need to understand that there's a potential risk of wasting time if they do not step back and develop a comprehensive plan for their solution needs. And in my role, I can help you with this through discovery and through demonstrations. It just, sometimes it may take more time. So you'll kind of, to answer that question, that was a long answer, but you'll know within the first 5 minutes how prepared they are when they come to you and they start talking to you.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard to prepare for things like making a big technology change, and it's because it's scary to know your weaknesses as a leader at a company.
And also my favorite thing to say, and I'm sure you've heard this from me before, Selena, many times, but you don't know what you don't know. Right. So companies, when they start, they're thinking, oh, I've got this, or I'm using this software and I'm using this. And it probably is a good solution. But 20 solutions later, they're like, oh my gosh, how did this get, like, I need to, you just don't know, because you're kind of putting those little pieces of a puzzle together, but it becomes overwhelming. So you don't know what you don't know. So I like to take that off of people from feeling, maybe they're feeling kind of uncomfortable with, well, how do I know? How do I not know? Well, sometimes you don't. And that's why reaching out to a good technology partner, reaching out to a consultant or CPAs, it's beneficial.
So you kind of answered a little bit about my next question. So why is it a problem when people aren't prepared? And what's the opportunity to improve there? You kind of answered a little bit of that, but if you want to elaborate further, Erica.
Well, in my opinion, if you're entering an ERP process without a clear vision, it's going to result in perpetuating your existing issues, and it'll burden your budget with a hefty invoice, right? I suggest that the way to improve is to maybe compile a list that would include things like what's currently functioning effectively in your processes, in your software, like what are things that are functioning effectively? What are areas that are falling short of expectations? Okay, again, in your processes, in your software, it's, a lot of times people say, well, if I have the right software or if I have the right processes, right, you got to have both a lot of times, right? So kind of make a list of those things. It's helpful. Just like, we make lists in our personal life all the time. Let's make one on our business and ask those questions. You'll want to pinpoint those right areas for enhancement. And I would suggest defining the overarching objectives that your ideal ERP solution should fulfill for your company. And then once you've identified a comprehensive understanding of your business landscape, you'll be able to pursue a solution that will align with your requirements, right? So this is not only going to empower you to engage with your vendors purposely, but it's also going to equip you with the discernment to determine whether a solution is a suitable match for your company's unique needs. So again, that initial step of pinpointing those pain points and areas in need of refinement, it'll serve as a vital stride in your quest to uncover that ideal solution.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a great way to improve and stuff. And going off of that, Andrea, what do you typically see when companies start talking to you first? I know we kind of dabbled in what Erica sees, but if companies are already taking a step back and approaching a consultant like you, what do people come to you with?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And I would echo a lot of what Erica said, which is they're having pain. There's a problem now. Too many systems. We want just one, or we can't compile the reports or get the data that we need. That's a huge one in order to make relevant business decisions. So they're coming to us with similar issues. I think the difference is we help them with how, and you've heard that saying, like, everybody wants to buy, but nobody wants to be sold. And the only way that you're going to be able to buy is if you know what you need up front, as Erica kind of mentioned. So I think there's three things I noted that I wanted to make sure of. Erica talked about lists, and we have a process that we go through with customers to help them get that list of critical requirements. We actually help them map out their flow, because sometimes it's like, well, you said, what could I do better? What's working and what's not working? Sometimes people don't actually know what's not working or what they could be doing better, because they don't know what's possible. So when they get a facilitated session of, like, okay, order to cash, for example, and you start talking about things like, well, if you have a great CRM and you input information in of a new customer potential, and then let's say it integrates perfectly into your ERP and you don't have to do any kind of redundant data entry, right? And all you're doing now is adding in particular numbers or volumes that people are ordering. I mean, things like that. I had one customer tell me, we were doing this mapping session, and she was that order entry person. When something got sold by the salesperson, they would send her an email with as much information as they had, and then she would manually type it in. And she's like, well, I think in this new system, I don't have a job. And I'm like, huh. Well, actually, right, it's not true, because one, it takes a long time to get a system implemented. And two, they were in a system that was so old, they were still pushing F3, F4, F5 to get from screen to screen.
Yeah.
She was printing out pick orders on single side manual paper. It was this thick, 2 inches thick. And I'm thinking to myself, there's so much opportunity for improvement. You guys aren't seeing, because you're not in that world. So I think having that flow and talking it through and getting people aligned and recognizing the possibilities and listing out what you could do in your future improved state when you're meeting those financial, especially, or growth objectives, and then prioritizing what's critical and what's not. So that list is huge. The time it takes to do that, if you are spending it with a vendor before you do it on your own, I think Erica mentioned this too, it does take longer. And back to the, nobody wants to be sold, everybody wants to buy. Think of, if you can come with that information up front, it saves that time. Honestly, it saves the time for the vendor too. And this is the last point, which is everybody wants to be a good fit. And I know one of the reasons I love working with the strategies group is they really want to be a good fit to their customers, because you can't sell to everybody. We all have limits there. So when we do work with someone, we want it to be a really good fit. And it will allow you to have a good fit with your vendor if you come to them and say, here's what I really need, here's what I don't need, or what's less important to me. And so they can tell you right off the bat, hey, it sounds like we're a fit for you, or, we're maybe not the best fit for you. I think it saves everybody time. So make that list, take that time up front, know what you need so that you can buy and evaluate the fit really early. But I think the reasons they come to us are very similar. Too much, things are going wrong, can't grow and scale.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of go off of that, so what would you recommend that companies do before they start reaching out to vendors? Because I know even before they're talking to people like us, what should they be doing? What should they be auditing? I know y'all kind of mentioned some of that, but is there anything deeper that you think, Andrea?
I think, I already kind of shared that with respect to getting ready with your list, but I do think there's two phases of this. There's what you're doing today and what's really broken today, where the current pain points are. And then there is what's the future state. And I would recommend the future state be with the leaders of the organization, because those people are more likely to understand the longer term vision of the company and maybe be a little bit less concerned, as the story I mentioned before about losing their job because they're in a new technology, and get those blinders off. So I would say, do your current state, figure out your pain, what's working today, what's not working today, get those lists with people who are actually actively in your environment, and then do your future state and where you're trying to go with your leadership team. That's what I would say. And I have worked with a company. In fact, I was talking to this company recently, about a $25 million company. They are in construction. They'd already bought a system without doing any of that. And they tried for 6 months to implement it, but didn't spend any time. And they ended up just deciding, never mind, we're not going to do it now. They want to grow to double in the next 3 years. And they're still on QuickBooks and spreadsheets. And I have no idea how they're planning to do that. So anyway, that's what can happen if you don't take the time, and then you go buy, and then you spent a bunch of money, and then you just throw in the towel because you're so frustrated.
That's right.
Yeah. That's, I'm like kind of disgusted because it's stressful, because how are you going to grow your company? You have all these plans, all these goals for future growth. And if you don't have a system that supports that, that can just be entirely damaging to your whole future path. So Erica, how does what Andrew said resonate with you? What do you think the first step in that process should really be?
Well, I mean, that answer resonates deeply with me. And Andrea, you are absolutely correct. You have to know what you want. You have to be able to articulate that. And you can do that by bringing all of your stakeholders together. And to me, this is a crucial initial step in the process. So it serves as the foundation for unearthing the unique challenges that are faced by each department. Okay. So think about it. After all, your employees and these teams, they're going to be the primary users of this chosen solution, right? So it's imperative to delve into their pain points. Now, I feel that by comprehending the needs and the desires of each department, you can compile a list of those indispensable functionalities that your team must have to propel this system forward. Additionally, you can create that supplementary. We're all about list, me and Andrea here. You're going to hear it. You can create a supplementary list that's going to have your nice to haves and that are not deal breakers. And then another list of the absolute no-goes, right? So this approach, it's not only going to bolster your search efforts, but it's also going to foster a more efficient decision-making process. So yeah, I mean, a significant aspect of finding a solution is recognizing that these stakeholders will ultimately become end users of this selected system. And so when you're actively involving them from the beginning of the search for a new solution, and you're empathizing with their pain points, you're not only ensuring a more successful implementation, but you're going to foster a sense of ownership and collaboration throughout the entire process. So long answer, I know, because I talk a lot, but listen, so something that Andrea said earlier about like fearing, I get that a lot where people think, oh man, I'm not going to have a job. Like this is going to replace my job. That is far from the truth, because trust me, you do a lot more than that function. Okay. You're worth a lot more than that. But I think something that's really important, and I've said this before as well, is when it comes to your leadership, they have to identify, right? Do these identifying of what's needed, but you have to want it more than you fear it. And everybody needs to have that sense across the board and the stakeholders. Do you want to be working all these extra hours, doing the same thing over and over, duplicating entries, doing a lot of manual entries? Or would you like to have a more efficient, streamlined process? It may be scary at the beginning, but this is what I can tell you we're going to have at the end, right? Our end result is a more efficient process. Everybody's happier. We're feeling good. You know, we feel good when we can complete a task. And when you can complete a task and it didn't make you want to pull your hair out, that's that's a win, right? I mean, when we are able to do things and we feel good about it and we go home and we're like, oh man, that was a great day at work. Not, I put that in this spreadsheet and then I put it in the CRM and then I put it on a paper and then I put it on the notepad and then I have a whiteboard that I put it on, and then, right, we're like going crazy. So we need to fear it less than we want it, right? And that's something that our leadership hopefully will instill in the company when we're making changes. I think that communication is imperative there.
Right. And that's really on the change management side as well. Back to that same story, the person who thought there was no work for her in the new system. First of all, we said it's not going to be like a light switch and today you have a job and tomorrow you don't. It's a lot of hard work to get there, one. And two, this particular person was doing route scheduling. And she already felt bad because she was doing it in their old F3, F4 system manually. And people would be driving from this part of the state to that part of the state to this part of the state. And it was because nobody can do that much work manually and be completely optimized.
That's
so
right.
When we talked about how she could serve her team members better, and then ultimately the customers better, that was key to her desire, of wanting a new system. Plus, we do change management, and we make sure that companies have that entire end user base trained and ready to go. Because you're absolutely right. You said something that struck this, which is people want to do a good job. They want to feel good about what they're doing. And
Right.
so if you're changing and they know how to do a good quote unquote job in the current system, but they're not sure how to do a good job in this new thing, when you can give them the assurance that it's a process, there will be training, there will be back and forth communication, there will be feedback, there's an opportunity to learn. We're not just going to ask you to do this with no training.
That's right.
Then I think they get a little bit more comfortable. And the proof is in the pudding. You have to actually do that as well. You can't just say you're going to do it and not do it. Anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. You both are absolutely right. And I think a point that I want to bring back is you guys said, yeah, people don't want to be sold to. So what they need to do is compile this list that we keep coming back to of ideas amongst themselves, amongst the stakeholders. So you all remember that these are truly the problems that you are facing. It's not something that some sales rep told you that you're facing. This is what you came up with. These are the problems that you face in your job. And bringing that with all your sales or your stakeholders, your leadership team and all that stuff before you get involved with a vendor like strategies group, it really helps remember why you're making this change and why you're buying a solution. So going off of all of that, what kind of customer is the best fit for a vendor like Strategies Group, Erica?
So the best fit for a long-term relationship customer is somebody that's in construction, manufacturing, distribution, and that industry. You value quality, open communication, and collaboration. You have a long-term perspective. You're adaptable. You're coachable, right? And you're open to a range of solutions. So this kind of partnership, it's going to be built on trust and commitment, and that commitment to that mutual growth of success. And I think that's probably the same, with the consultants, right? It's just having that open communication and trust. I think that's the most important. I mean, you have to come to us knowing that I'm coming to a company, whether it be a Andrea or straight to a strategies group. I trust you. Once they learn, I mean, you have to meet people. You don't trust the man in the white van giving out candy right away, right? So we have to build that relationship, build that trust.
Unless it's Halloween, in which case you totally.
Then we're gonna get the candy. Yes. So sorry, I have to always crack some kind of jokes. They may not be funny, but I find myself hilarious. Okay, Andrea.
So since you're kind of a third party in this this implementation process, this finding a solution process, Andrea, how do you help with the vendor customer relationship? How do you help streamline that?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll answer how we help with the relationship, and I want to just address something I saw in the questions, which is
Mhm.
people, process, technology, which is right in here. I think the people is always the hardest part. So Alfred will maybe talk more about that question later, but this is a specific example because just like Erica said, we all want a good fit. And so the people and the communication and developing that trust over time is the best way to do it. And it is stressful to do an ERP implementation. I'm not going to lie, it's not going to be a cakewalk. You can't outsource the entire thing. Your team will have to participate. And, remember, they're going to use this thing every single day. So it makes sense that they would participate. So it's not always smooth sailing. And the nice thing about what our firm is able to do as a go-between is, one of our employees actually, she said, it's like when you are a vendor and a customer, you're getting married. That's a good relationship analogy, business or marriage. Because it's a long-term relationship. Nobody wants to do it every couple of years. Like this is going to last you for hopefully, 5 to 10 years plus. And so we are like the chaperone. We're like the chaperone while you're dating. We make sure people are playing by the rules, and we don't let it's natural for people to forget to write things down. We talked about those lists, but we do write things down. Hey, remember you said you wanted this, you said this was more important than that. And so now this vendor is saying they're going to give you this instead of that, because that's what you said was more important. And that's why it's costing this instead of that, and things like that. So we can come in and be sort of this neutral third party, because quite frankly, we're going to leave. Like either party, we don't want people to we're very professional. We don't want anybody getting mad at anybody. But at the same time, if the customer, the client who's buying the system gets a little upset, they can have us, be the go-between. They don't have to worry about possibly hurting that long-term relationship. They can vent to us. We can try to smooth things over. It's a little less emotional. It allows people to preserve, I think, that relationship that is going to be a marriage relationship in the long term. So it's really all about the people. We do need to figure out the processes. Of course, the technology has to be right, but the way to have a good implementation and make sure it's a good fit is the people.
Absolutely agree.
Mhm.
Absolutely agree. Because at the end of the day, the software that we sell, that many VARs sell, you could go to different VARs. The software is going to be the software. The people, the relationship, the trust, the confidence, that is something that's invaluable, in my opinion. And we all do that, right? I mean, we do that. Let's take out technology. You go to a restaurant, you buy anything, you buy a car, whatever, you buy a home, you're going to pick a realtor you trust or a mortgage company you trust, right? Like at the end of the day, it's about that relationship. It's about that trust and the confidence. I agree.
Yeah, for sure. The people make it, obviously. Like if you don't have the right personalities there, um the right
Connection.
chemistry, if you will, to go back to that marriage analogy, then it's just not gonna work. It's just not gonna work.
And better to find that out early. So
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly.
So I know the ERP itself is expensive. Erica and I know that all too well, and I'm sure many of our attendees know that. But what kind of costs are expected in the selection process, Andrea?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I appreciate the opportunity to share about this, because there's a difference between direct costs and indirect costs or hidden costs. And so we've been talking a lot about, if you don't know what you need, if you haven't taken the time to compile your list, if you haven't thought about your future state and your growth, and all of those things take time. Well, if you're doing this on your own, it may take longer. And so if you have someone kind of who's been there, done that before, who knows that journey, can guide you through it and keep you on track, it will take less time. I mean, you would have to not actively not participate in order for it to take longer, in which case, why would you have started in the first place? So it will take less time. So when you think about direct costs of paying a consulting firm or somebody like us to do that, or even dedicating one of your own team members to take away time from their normal job to be able to do that, right? You're paying them to, there is going to be a direct cost for that. But if you think about it in terms of, okay, how long are we going to delay if we don't have somebody pushing the envelope here? And that's one thing. But what about, remember, there's a reason we're going for a new system in the first place. It's because we're breaking and we're bursting at the seams with our current system. And so that's inhibiting us from growing our business. So that delayed time of being able to grow our business, if you take a year to select a system, that's a year that you weren't able to grow the business. And so I think companies really need to consider that indirect or that hidden cost when they decide whether they're going to invest in selecting something the most effective way possible. So for us, it typically takes about 4 to 5 months of duration. So think about that in terms of the cost. And here's why, right? So first you need to gather all those requirements. That's like a couple of weeks. And then you need to prioritize them. And then you need to narrow it down and start looking for which vendors can meet those critical requirements. That's another couple of weeks. Then you're doing all the demonstrations. You're scheduling those. Even if you're only going to 3 to 5 vendors, you're still scheduling that time. People are busy, right? And then you want extra demos because your accounting team wants to see how to do a month close or whatever it might be. So you've got, I mean, 2 weeks is actually really, really optimistic.
That's the least possible amount of time.
Okay, then you always have some follow-up questions, and then you want to pull everything together. You know, you narrow it maybe down to 2 or 3 top choices that you present to your leadership team, your steering committee, and then they're going to see it. Then they're going to want another week to think about it. So there's like 5 or 6 steps that all take 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, there's your 4 months, possibly 5 months right there. And then, you know, you guys can answer this better than I can. Just because you said, okay, yeah, we want to work with you, strategy group, then you're going to send them a contract, then you've got to read it and send it to your lawyer. You're going to have questions. I mean, I've seen that drag out for 4 to 8 weeks, depending. So it does take time. And if you're not kind of pushing it, just waiting until people get around to it, that's lost revenue for your business. So.
Absolutely. So Erica, like Andrea mentioned, how does that compare with what we do? Like how does that align with how long it takes for a company once they get started with us?
So how we differ from AJC is that we take on the role of being the experts in technology, right? And we're going to work with companies to make sure that our solutions will be a good fit for them. And Andrea said that she's kind of, because of the ongoing relationship she has with us, that's kind of already been chosen, right? But we also kind of do our own discovery because we're building that story and that journey as well, because we're going to show you the solution through demos, right? Once they select their solution, we're going to work with you guys to implement the solution using your business processes, and we'll train your team to use the new system, right? So one thing, to go back to what Andrea said earlier about how it's just not fun in implementation. We like to say that nobody has ever woke up and said, I think today I want to do an implementation of an ERP. Nobody's said that. So it is not the greatest, funnest thing, but it's worth it in the end. I'll just say that. But when it comes to time, like when it comes to how long the process is on our part, right, it really depends on the company itself. So companies who have done their research and they're prepared, they can make a software selection rather quickly. And again, if you're working with Andrea, usually they are coming in a little more prepared and more confident in the selection process as well, because they have an advocate on their side. However, there's many features and functionalities of an ERP system. Okay. And as experts in the field, I will take the time with companies to ensure that they know what they're getting into and what exactly they're going to need out of their system. So when we get to know what you need, then we're going to show you the tailored demos on that functionality. And then we're going to price out the solutions according to your specific needs. So I value spending time, the time that's needed with my customer. Okay. I believe that this race is at the customer's pace, not mine. If you need me to move fast, trust me, that's my superpower. I can move fast. However, if we need to move more slowly, that's perfectly fine. So what I do is I take a consultative approach. I have successfully closed a deal in as little as a month, within a couple weeks of the discovery to the close, it was a month, literally. But then I've had deals that it's taken 10 months, right? So I'm always tailoring the journey to your unique requirements and your timeline. And then ultimately you will make that decision. You need to make that decision with confidence, regardless of how much or how little time it takes to get to that decision. Now that's just really the sales process. Once you get into implementation, it's going to depend on the functionality and what all is involved in that implementation. The one that I closed in a month, they wanted to get off of QuickBooks and they just needed core functionality. And later, as a phase 2, they were going to add inventory. So it was a quick close. And then I guess we had maybe 4 to 5 months of implementation, if that gave you a good example of a simplified example.
Yeah, for sure. So we won't go fully into implementation today, but to close the selection out, what can a company expect from the transition between selecting a vendor, deciding you're going to go with strategies group in this situation, and then beginning the implementation process?
So once you decide that you want to sign with us, we'll sign some paperwork, which when you're working with me, that's quick. I'm very, very detail oriented. So I'll have your paperwork done. We send that over through DocuSign. That gets signed. We put in the order with your ERP provider. And then I hand you off over to our implementation team. You'll have a dedicated project manager. They'll work with your team and any consultants like Andrea or a CPA, if you have a CPA involved in the process. And then you will know from the time before we even sign the paper, based on your ERP full package solution, what's going to be implemented. I would be able to give you a timeline at that before you even sign. Is it a 4-month implementation? Is it a 6-month, right? And all of that is always overly communicated when you work with Erica.
And to go off of that a little bit, off of what Erica said, it really depends on what sort of system you're wanting. So if you're a company that is a construction company, but you also are a supplier, so say you're a flooring company, you supply or you distribute the floor, but you're also have an install component. That might be a longer implementation than somebody that's just a general contractor, for instance, somebody that's just doing project management in the system and doesn't have to worry about inventory. So it definitely depends on the complexity of your company, how that implementation will go, the length of that implementation. But she obviously covered the transition process, but I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more. And then for you, Andrea, how what can our audience expect your participation being in that implementation process?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And we love partnering with companies like Strategies Group because you guys are so communicative and responsive. It's very refreshing. Let me just put it that way. So what we will do if a company elects to continue having us represent them as their internal project manager, and for those of you in construction, it's like an owner's rep, right? So if you have a general contractor, of course, they have their project manager, but you might have an owner's rep as well that's making sure that your side is ready for this. And when I was an owner's rep, what I would do is, equipment was being installed, walls were going up. I would get the end users out in front of that equipment and be like, hey guys, we're about to close in on this wall right in front of this electrical panel. Is this going to give you the right access that you need to be able to maintain this equipment? Things like that, right? So that is kind of, again, it's an owner's rep job because you're interfacing with all of the end users, and training will come from the vendor, but somebody's got to make sure that it's stuck. And if it's videos that everybody's expected to watch, even if it's, on some sort of timeline and program, you got to make sure they actually watched it and that they have any questions, that those get answered. So that's the type of thing that we'll be concerned about on your behalf, so that you can go live with the expected timeline that you originally came from. We talked to a company the other day who they wanted a 5-month implementation. And then they told me concurrently, they were going to do an audit of their entire company and they were going to hire a new controller. And I'm like, and you want a 5-month implementation? And this was, 5 different states. I think they had 8 or 9 locations, 80 plus employees. I mean, this is not straightforward, real simple. And they wanted to, it was the audit, the controller, and they wanted to put in an e-commerce at the same time within the 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ambitious.
So we had a nice conversation about the amount of time that was going to take. And like you said, the race at their pace, I love that. I'm going to start using that. We're happy to go. We can drive that. We can't drive it in a bubble without you. Right. And I see this question here in the chat from Alfred about implementation methodologies. We employ Agile whenever we can. And, you know, in Agile, especially if you're using Scrum, you have these daily huddles. If you want to go faster, have a daily huddle. What did I do yesterday? What am I getting done today? And what roadblocks have I encountered? I did do an implementation one time in 5 months. It was January 15th is when we started. We went live on May 1st. But the way we did that is the leader in operations, the leader in quality, the leader in accounting, the second person in accounting, customer service person, all gave 25 hours a week to the project. We had a project manager as well as the vendor's project manager. And we had daily huddles every single day for 15 minutes on the phone. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can do it fast, but you have to be prepared for the effort.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. And to read that question to the group, he asked, can you talk about implementation methodologies and any new patterns or insights around what is changing on how projects are being implemented? So Andrea kind of covered that, but Erica, do you have anything to add about that?
I mean, I think Andrea covered it pretty well. And yeah, I honestly really feel like she did a great job on it.
Yeah, like
and
the
you did too.
huddles,
You mentioned it.
stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. And I mean, the communication and the major, it really does take a commitment. And if, you know, we've had companies that they're all ready, they're like so excited at the beginning, but then life happens, right? Life happens and they get busy and then they're like, wait, it was supposed to be 5 months. But when you're not able to follow through on the commitment of the timeline that's been created, well, you know, it's not always going to go that quick, but sometimes it can go quicker because in situations like what Andrea said, I mean, they dedicated that time, they stayed committed to it. So yeah, I mean, I think that if you have a true understanding of what it takes in an implementation, and you know what, you're not going to know that before you get started. And I think, you know, like even I said, earlier, before you sign anything, I work with my implementation team before we even do paperwork so that I know based on how many deals we've closed that month and who's starting implementation, something could have changed from the first time I talked to you. We may have been working for the last 3 months, and 3 months ago, you know, we had a 4 to 5 month timeline on implementation for your scope of work. But maybe now we've closed a few more deals. And so there, you know, we have to push that out to maybe 6 months, right? Communicate, just always communicate to your customer. And I believe that they'll really appreciate that. I know I do as a consumer and with coworkers or anything else, right?
Mm-hmm. I would say, yeah, I completely agree with that. But there's a lot of stuff in terms of methodology and new practices in the ERP world and consulting world and all of that stuff. But I would say stick to what works for your team and find a vendor that's going to work around the way that your team works too. So like we said, it's a marriage between the vendor, and you guys. So you really need to make sure that you're speaking the same language, you have the same methodologies in place, and you're all reading from the same script. And then I'd say another thing is know what your absolutes are, what you need to get implemented right away, what you need to be working on every single day in your business to function, and make sure that your partner knows that those things are a priority for you, so we can get that aspect of it implemented first. Yeah. So that you guys can get trained on those aspects first too. So then it's a more seamless integration of the solution. But as I said, we're not getting too deep into implementation right now.
I'm going to stop myself from what I was going to say about phase 2. Except for to underscore, it's true. If you want to go live at any point in time, there's going to be a line in the sand where you say, this is a great idea and an ad. We're going to put it on the backlog list for phase 2 so that we can get this first MVP phase 1 out there. Mm-hmm. And we have a process for doing phase 2 as well. Maybe we could talk about another time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Maybe it's round 2 of our fireside chat.
Yeah.
We can talk about
Agile in that one, so.
Yeah, for sure. But I hope that answered that question. But we do have another question, which we kind of talked about a little bit, but what are the top 3 reasons that implementations fail? Is it people, process, technology? What are the top 3 reasons?
Who are you asking that to?
Go ahead, Erica.
Either one of you guys. That was a question from the chat, so I don't really have a designated person, but feel free, whoever
I
wants
mean, I
to.
could be wrong here. Again, I don't do implementation. I'm in sales, guys. So, but I would say some of the things that I've heard would be the communication, the expectations. I think expectations is probably one of the biggest things. Okay. And I think the buy-in from your team is another big reason why implementations fail. If you don't have the buy-in, you haven't been communicating and including and finding out what's really working and what's not internally, we've seen that implementations have failed because of that as well.
Yeah, I think the expectations is huge. And it's more than just talking about them. We've said the lists, okay, but you do need to write it down. You really need to write it down, because sometimes you forget what the expectation was, and people might have different understandings when it's verbal.
That's right.
And then back to the change management piece and the buy-in, we had a CEO tell us the other day that he was just going to send an email the week before everybody needed to get trained, and they were just going to do it. And I'm like, and that was their culture, and so maybe that's fair, and I'm not part of that company. But I think of my kids, for example, like when I tell them exactly what they're going to be doing next weekend when we have a family trip and whatever else, and it's like, you're just going to do it because I'm telling you, and how happy are they? Maybe they'll do it, but they may or may not make it pleasant for me, right? So I do think that you communicate again, you communicate more, you ask for feedback, you ask for feedback again, you ask for more.
That's our project management background in us. That's why we strive for that communicate. That's that project manager in us.
Absolutely. And there's a difference between being efficient and being effective, right? Efficient is like, let's just get this done. We're going to check all of these boxes.
That's right.
And you can certainly do that in an implementation. You're going to migrate your data. It's going to be all clean. You're going to configure your system. You're going to test everything. You're going to exception test it. You've done it all. Yes. But you haven't talked to the people, so it's not going to be effective. You might as well take that money and throw it into the toilet, because if people aren't going to use it, your business isn't going to thrive. So yeah,
that's right. And Robin has great feedback. And again, she's speaking my language here on socializing with the key stakeholders. Like, that's so important. It really is a deal breaker if you're not, communicating with your stakeholders. Sorry, I'm like looking at the comments here. And
well, plug for Robin, because I asked her to join us. She works for us, and we're doing another one on change management on November 9th if people want to join that. So
that'd be awesome. Yeah, I may have to join that and take a look at that with you guys, because I really love your content and your brain. I love what you guys are thinking here. And thank you, Robin, for saying you love my jokes.
Well, I think it's such a pleasure to be here with you guys. I feel like, the fit, the conversation, the responsiveness, the communication, this is exactly what we hope for with all of our customers, and what I hope that everyone on the line or who watches this in the future will recognize is important.
I agree. Absolutely.
Thank you both for your time. We're really happy that we had this conversation. I think it was really strong, and we got even further from the course of what the actual topic was. So I'm really happy that we were able to really dive in deep, and I hope everybody else found great pleasure in this. We answered most of the questions in the chat, I believe. I think everybody's questions were answered. So so if somebody wanted to get in touch with either of you, how would they do that? Erica first.
Well, like I mentioned at the beginning of our meeting, I use LinkedIn heavily. So I would love for you guys all to connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look up Erica Carosi, and Erica's with a K, ERIKA. You can also reach us on our website at strategiesgroup.com on the contact us page. So I'm very happy to have been able to have this conversation with you guys. I loved all of the comments and the participation. I will say this has been the most fun I've had on any webinar, podcast, whatever we call it, our fireside chat. Next time we'll have some hot chocolate.
And s'mores.
And s'mores.
And I also am available on LinkedIn. There's a lot of Andrea Joneses, I'm sure, but I'm the only one whose company is named after me, Andrea Jones Consulting. And you can also find me at AndreaJonesConsulting.com and see pictures of our entire team, because it's way more than only me. So.
Right.
And you can find me at Selena Patel on LinkedIn. And my email is spatel@strategiesgroup.com. Feel free to contact me and you'll get anybody at the strategies team. And like Erica said, the strategies group website is also fair game. So thank you all for joining our call today. Do you, Erica or Andrea, have any final things that you'd like to say, or are we done here?
No, I mean, I could go on forever, y'all. I could go on forever, but this has been a lot of fun, and I do plan on joining you guys on the 9th for your change resistance with an ERP implementation. I'd like to join that with you guys. So hopefully be virtually there with a few more of you guys.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, just thanks again for the opportunity. Looking forward to helping all of our customers get better and grow and scale.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. And we'll probably have a round 2, another fireside chat in the future. So everybody look out for that. Tell your friends if you enjoyed this, and thank you all and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.